Well, delighted now to be joined by Scottish Rugby's Chief Operating Officer, Dominic McKay. Dominic, thank you very much for joining us on this Zoom call. Just wanted to ask you a couple of questions on the back of a big meeting you had yesterday with the Minister for Sport, Joe Fitzpatrick. If you could just talk us through the purpose of that meeting and maybe something that you got out of it.
Yeah, happy to do so, Jamie. So ourselves and some other of the national governing bodies, football and horse racing, got together yesterday to meet with the Government Minister for Sport, Joe Fitzpatrick, and had a really good conversation with him and the Clinical Director, Professor Jason Leach, to share with them some thoughts that we had as sports in respect of a potential phased and gradual return to some sporting activities in the coming weeks and months when the government are happy to allow that to happen. So we wanted to share with government some thoughts around that, and also to share with them the significant challenge that we are facing. And from a rugby perspective, we were able to share with the Minister the real significant impact on our financial position in respect of no rugby being able to take place just now for very good reasons. So it was a very positive initial discussion, which we'll see perhaps more discussions in the weeks ahead.
Now, one of the questions that we're going to get asked all the time is, was there anything around a potential date for rugby to return? Can you shed any light on that at all, Dom?
Really, we weren't looking for a date yesterday. It was really getting to know each other's challenges and offer support, certainly from a Scottish Rugby perspective, to say to the Minister that we continue to be there for the country, that we want to support the country in any way we can, whether that's through our messaging platforms or whether that's through the utilisation of the stadium, but also when it's right and proper and the government are happy, that we can gradually take steps with them to get our players initially training and message to the grassroots in terms of the challenges that they'll be facing over the coming weeks as domestic rugby will look to get some clarity on when it may be able to resume in the weeks ahead. And it wasn't necessarily about dates, it was more about just getting to know each other's challenges.
And when that rugby does return, Dom, was there a discussion around maybe playing it behind closed doors?
Yes, yeah, so we shared a presentation with the Minister where we took them through some of the thinking that our threat management group have been working through. So we've got a bunch of experts across Scottish Rugby of all departments that feed in every day to our threat management group. And as part of their considerations and deliberations, they're looking at what a phased and gradual return to rugby could be, particularly for our elite players, our players in Glasgow and Edinburgh. And we spoke about, initially that's around players being able to train individually at home, and the players moving potentially to training at BT Murrayfield, and then training in a group at BT Murrayfield, and at some point down the line, potentially playing behind closed doors if that's what the government deems is appropriate. But we're very much open-minded about sharing our ideas and potential solutions to the challenges and refining them based on the best government advice and the best medical advice and the best scientific advice. So we're certainly completely open-minded. We think sport's got a really important role to play to help the country and to help the nation, both from an economic perspective. We contribute as a sport around £150 million a year to the Scottish economy. So when it's right and when it's appropriate, we want to resume sport to help support the economy. But secondly, sport has an ability to positively affect the nation's mood. So when we can, it'd be great to be all excited about watching sport again. So even if that's behind closed doors, we're utterly open-minded about that.
Dominic, you mentioned there about the economy and the benefits around having our big events at BT Murrayfield and beyond. Could you just talk in more detail around kind of maybe the numbers around that and how much value that Scottish Rugby can bring?
Yeah, so we had a report commissioned earlier this year by YouGov, independently reviewed our season's events for the previous year, and it demonstrated that Scottish Rugby generates over £152 million per year to the Scottish economy. So that's £152 million that are going into hotels and taxi companies and restaurants and the wider economy. So in addition to rugby being an important sporting organisation, we've also got a very important role to play in supporting the economy, and that's both in Glasgow and in Edinburgh. So, when it's right and when it's proper, we want to start contributing back into that economy by those events coming back on tap. And importantly, the income that we generate as an organisation within Scottish Rugby and that wider economic impact is important to our local rugby clubs. We have 230 rugby clubs or so around the whole country. They rely very heavily on Scottish Rugby for their direct support. And it's very important that we're able to get events back on in due course to start putting money back through into local rugby clubs. We'd be very pleased that we set up a hardship fund for our clubs at the beginning of the season being shut down. We started a fund of over £500,000, and that's now been, I think, oversubscribed, which is a recognition of the challenge that is being faced by local rugby clubs across the length and breadth of the country. And those local rugby clubs are the backbone of many communities. So it's vital in our discussions with government that we talk about the enormous challenge, not just to the professional side of the sport, but also to the grassroots side of the sport. And that's something that we'll be stressing in the coming days.
What's next for you and the government in these meetings?
So I guess there was two things that were important yesterday, which was sport to collaborate together. And that's something we've spoken about at Scottish Rugby for some considerable time, that we don't have all the right ideas. Football have got a lot of good ideas. So if we can share those ideas together, we'll probably come up with smart thoughts around how we can gradually return in due course. So come back to the government in the coming weeks with some fresh ideas around that graduated return to training initially, focus on training initially, and then sharing some thoughts around what we might do at BT Murrayfield. And we're very fortunate that at Murrayfield we've got our training facilities, our gym, and our stadium in one self-contained environment. So we can create what we're describing as a bit of a bubble environment at BT Murrayfield for our elite players to train ahead of potential games taking place. So we want to collaborate and then share that information back into government, and at the same time highlight the enormous challenge. And it's important for me to stress that the enormous challenge that we face financially, as all sports are facing, because we generate our revenues through events, and being unable to play rugby, we don't get to have the benefit of spectators, broadcasting revenue, or some of our sponsor revenue. So it's an enormous challenge. And we want to assist the government to be part of the solution for sport beginning to return.